November 1942. Stalingrad, a city that once pulsed with the rhythm of industry and human life, had become a frozen graveyard, its streets haunted by the ghosts of war. Smoke curled from countless fires, mixing with the biting winter air and creating a haze that blurred the line between sky and ruin. Buildings, once proud symbols of Soviet prosperity, now stood as skeletal monuments, their hollowed windows staring emptily into the snow-covered streets below. Every corner, every alley, every shattered rooftop was a trap, concealing danger and death. Amid this devastation, one shadow moved silently, unseen and unchallenged. His name was Vasily Zaitsev, a sniper from the Ural Mountains, whose skill and patience would soon make him a legend. The German Sixth Army had advanced into the city with calculated efficiency, a relentless tide of soldiers in armor pressing against Soviet defenses. Tanks rumbled over broken cobblestones, their metal tracks crushing debris, while artillery shells screamed overhead and exploded against buildings, sending clouds of dust and stone into the frozen air. The Red Army soldiers, weary from weeks of combat and shortages, dug themselves into crumbling trenches and improvised barricades. Yet, despite their determination, the enemy seemed unstoppable. In this chaos, a single man, armed only with his rifle, his training, and his resolve, could make a difference. And Zaitsev understood the weight of that responsibility. As he moved across rooftops, careful not to disturb the loose snow or rubble beneath his boots, Zaitsev observed the enemy with the patience of a predator. Every movement was catalogued, every patrol path memorized, every sound registered. He did not act on impulse. He waited. He calculated. The ruined city was his chessboard, and each German soldier was a piece to be struck with precision. The shadows of Stalingrad became his allies. The wind, the smoke, and the silence were his tools. But survival was not only about observation. Every moment carried danger. The snapping of a twig, the shift of snow, or the glint of metal on metal could reveal his position and end his life instantly. The city, in its frozen desolation, was both battlefield and prison. Zaitsev's eyes, cold and focused, scanned the streets, reading patterns, understanding the psychology of an advancing army, predicting the mistakes of men trained to kill but unprepared for the unseen threat stalking them. For the soldiers below, the shadow was invisible, but its impact was immediate. Whispers began to spread among German troops. An unseen sniper, precise and deadly, striking from rooftops, from ruins, from the smoke-filled distance. Fear, subtle but pervasive, began to creep into their ranks. Each bullet, each fallen soldier carried the weight of uncertainty. For the men of Stalingrad, this single marksman became more than a fighter. He became a symbol of hope, a guardian in a city where hope was scarce. And so, as the city lay in ruins, as smoke and snow mingled with the cries of war, Zaitsev prepared for his first strike. He understood that the streets of Stalingrad were not just a battlefield. They were a proving ground. Each decision, each shot, each moment of patience could alter the course of the battle. And in that frozen, shattered city, one man was about to make history, one bullet at a time.
Vasily Zaitsev was born in 1915, deep in the remote Ural Mountains, a land of endless forests, icy rivers, and a winter that seemed to last half the year. Life here was defined by survival, a harsh teacher that left no room for weakness. From a young age, Zaitsev learned the rhythm of the forest, the way snow muffled footsteps, how the wind carried sound, and how the slightest movement could betray a hunter or a hunted. Hunting was not a pastime, but a necessity. Every shot required patience, calculation, and the complete understanding of one's environment. These lessons, seemingly simple, would one day become the foundation of his legendary skill. As a boy, he would rise before dawn, wrapping himself in furs to brave the biting cold, venturing into the forests to track foxes, hares, and deer. Each hunt was a lesson in patience. Hours could pass without sighting a single animal, but Zaitsev remained motionless, studying patterns of movement, listening to the sounds of the forest, learning how to anticipate behavior. He learned to read the landscape, the slight bend in a branch, the disturbance of snow on the ground, the glint of sunlight on a distant tree trunk, all signals that revealed the presence of life. By the time he was a teenager, his aim was flawless, his instincts honed, and his patience unshakable. Life in the small village where he grew up was quiet but demanding. Families relied on each other, and every member contributed to survival. Zaitsev helped with chores, repaired tools, and observed the practical skills of his elders. Yet even in this simplicity, he cultivated a mind that measured, calculated, and observed with the sharpness of a predator. These skills, which seemed mundane in peacetime, would later define him in the crucible of war. When the war reached the Soviet Union in 1941, Zaitsev's abilities were quickly recognized by the Red Army. Unlike many young recruits, untested and anxious, he possessed the rare combination of composure, precision, and analytical thought. His instructors noted his ability to remain calm under pressure, to calculate distances instinctively, and to observe patterns that others could not. He was assigned to sniper training, where his natural skill merged with military discipline. Each exercise, each drill, reinforced his understanding that in battle, survival often depended not on strength or speed, but on patience, timing, and mental acuity. But even as the world descended into chaos, Zaitsev carried with him the lessons of the Urals. Silence was a weapon, observation was power, and precision was survival. The forests had taught him how to move without being seen, how to anticipate the actions of others, and how to strike at the exact moment that would ensure success. These abilities, forged in snow and shadow, were now ready to be tested in a city under siege. Looking back, it seems almost inevitable that a boy from the quiet villages of the Urals would become one of the most feared snipers in history. The forests had shaped his hands, the winters had shaped his endurance, and the stillness of nature had shaped his mind. When Zaitsev would later step into the ruins of Stalingrad, it was not simply training or chance that guided him. It was a lifetime of preparation, distilled into the focused, unblinking gaze of a man who understood that every movement, every decision, every breath could mean life or death.
When Vasily Zaitsev first entered Stalingrad in late 1942, he was met not with the city he had once imagined, but with a vision of absolute devastation. The skyline was jagged, broken buildings looming like silent sentinels over streets littered with rubble and debris. Factories that had once produced engines, steel, and hope now smoldered with smoke, their skeletal frames twisted by relentless bombardment. Every corner of the city was a battlefield, every street a potential trap. The air was heavy with ash, gunpowder, and the faint, bitter scent of freezing blood. Soldiers of the Red Army moved with purpose but weariness, their boots crunching over broken pavement and scattered glass. They set up barricades, mounted machine guns behind crumbling walls, and crouched in trenches hastily dug amid the ruins. The harsh winter wind cut through tattered uniforms, and the bitter cold seeped into their bones, adding another layer of hardship to the already unbearable conditions. Zaitsev observed all this quietly, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. The city was a labyrinth, and the enemy moved within it like shadows, but he would soon learn to turn that labyrinth to his advantage. The German Sixth Army was advancing with ruthless precision, confident in its superior numbers and firepower.
Tanks rumbled through the streets, their tracks grinding over debris. Artillery shells screamed overhead, and bullets ricocheted against walls. Yet, amidst this overwhelming force, the Soviet defenders clung to hope. Every building fortified, every rooftop manned, and every sniper hidden in the shadows became part of a delicate balance between life and death. Zaitsev understood that he would not fight like a conventional soldier. He would not charge into streets or face volleys of bullets head-on. His battlefield was the shadow, his weapon the rifle, and his patience the greatest shield. As he moved through the city, Zaitsev began mapping it in his mind. Rooftops that offered sightlines, alleys where patrols passed predictably, rubble piles that could conceal him. Each became a piece of a larger puzzle. He noted the direction of prevailing winds, the angles of sunlight that could give away a position, and the sounds of enemy movement, from the faint clatter of boots on metal to the distant hum of armored vehicles. Every observation was stored, every pattern memorized. In the chaos of destruction, he found clarity, a method to navigate death without being touched by it. The soldiers around him were aware of the peril, but could not see the invisible force that now roamed their streets. Zaitsev was patient. He understood that one misstep could cost him his life, but each calculated move brought him closer to mastery of this urban battlefield. The city, in all its ruin, became a silent partner, a protector and a guide. From shattered windows and crumbling rooftops, he would strike. From the shadows, he would watch, waiting for the enemy to make mistakes. Stalingrad was more than a city under siege. It was a proving ground. Every ruined street, every frozen alley, every shattered building held lessons for the sniper. And as Zaitsev prepared to take his first deadly shot, he realized that survival would demand not only skill and courage, but also an intimate understanding of the city itself. In the frozen labyrinth of Stalingrad, one man, armed with patience, cunning, and a rifle, would become a force that even the mighty German army could not ignore.
The first kill is always the most difficult. It is a test of nerves, of patience, of precision, and above all, of resolve. For Vasily Zaitsev, it would be a defining moment, the point at which a skilled hunter becomes a sniper in the theater of urban warfare. From his rooftop perch, he scanned the streets below, observing every movement, every shift of shadow, every telltale sign that the enemy was unaware of his presence. The city of Stalingrad, with all its ruins and rubble, was both a playground and a deadly trap. One false move could expose him, one miscalculation could be fatal. Hours passed as he waited. His breath formed small clouds in the frigid air, but his focus never wavered. He noted the patrol patterns of the German soldiers, the cadence of their boots over broken pavement, the way their attention shifted between the rubble and their companions. Among them, a single officer moved with authority, gesturing to men and inspecting barricades. Zaitsev's eyes followed every step, measuring distance, wind direction, and the slope of the ruined street below. The rifle in his hands was an extension of his body, every inch calibrated for the shot he knew he would eventually take. Time seemed to stretch. The officer paused near a shattered wall, adjusting his coat against the winter cold, oblivious to the silent hunter above. Zaitsev adjusted the scope slightly, accounting for the wind that whispered across the rooftops. He remembered the lessons of the Urals. Patience, observation, and anticipation were the key to survival. He inhaled slowly, controlled his heartbeat, and prepared to strike. Then, in a single seamless motion, he squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked through the cold air, the sound sharp and precise, bouncing off the walls of the ruined city. The officer crumpled to the ground. For a moment, the city was silent, as if holding its breath in reverence for the act that had just occurred. The impact of that first kill was more than physical. It was psychological. Zaitsev had sent a message, invisible but unmistakable, to every enemy soldier in Stalingrad. The streets were no longer safe.
The shadows could kill, and no one could move without fear. The effect was immediate. German soldiers whispered among themselves, unnerved by the sudden, unexplainable loss of their officer. Fear spread faster than bullets. The invisible sniper had become a ghost in the ruins. Zaitsev, however, did not linger in triumph. The city demanded vigilance, and the hunter remained patient, watching, waiting for the next opportunity. He moved silently to a new position, keeping low, blending with the rubble, and listening to the distant sounds of artillery and machine gun fire. Each move was deliberate, each step calculated. For Zaitsev, the first kill was not only a test of skill, but also a lesson in the psychological power of fear. He understood that the mind could be as lethal as any weapon. The Germans would now move with caution, hesitate at corners, question every shadow. He had begun to shape the battlefield, to control the flow of the enemy, not through numbers, but through anticipation, precision, and patience. Every shot that followed would build upon this foundation, turning rumor into legend, fear into strategy, and a single marksman into a symbol of resistance against the might of the German army. And so, from the cold, silent rooftop, with snow drifting around him and the city sprawling in ruin below, Vasily Zaitsev became something more than a soldier. He became a shadow, a ghost, a force unseen but felt by every enemy who dared to step into Stalingrad's shattered streets. The first kill had been made. The legend had begun.
After his first kill, Vasily Zaitsev's reputation began to ripple through the shattered streets of Stalingrad. But in war, victory breeds attention. German forces, recognizing the growing threat, deployed their own elite snipers to track and eliminate him. The quiet streets of the city, already laden with tension, now became a deadly chessboard. Every alley, every window, every pile of rubble held not only his prey, but potential death. Zaitsev knew the stakes. One miscalculation could end his life, and yet the city demanded his courage and skill more than ever. The duels began subtly. He noticed a flicker of movement in a distant rooftop window, a shadow that mirrored his own patience and calculation. German snipers were trained killers, precise, disciplined, and ruthless. They watched for patterns, analyzed his known positions, and adapted to every strategy he employed. For Zaitsev, each engagement was not merely a fight to kill, but a battle of wits, a test of observation and psychology. He had to anticipate their movements as carefully as he anticipated his own shots. On one cold morning, with snow drifting like soft ash over the ruins, Zaitsev spotted a German sniper positioning on a half-collapsed building across the street. The man's movements were deliberate, calculating, and carried the weight of deadly intent. Zaitsev froze, observing every detail, the way the enemy adjusted his scope, the slight twitch in his finger, the rhythm of his breathing. Patience, Zaitsev reminded himself. One wrong move, one premature shot, and the hunter could become the hunted. Hours stretched into a tense standoff. Zaitsev moved silently, repositioning along a ridge of rubble, careful not to disturb the snow or give away his presence. He observed the sniper's behavior, noting the angles of light, the wind direction, and the paths the enemy might take to escape detection. The city itself became part of the strategy. Crumbling walls offered cover, collapsed staircases provided vantage, and broken windows framed precise lines of sight. Every detail mattered. When the moment finally arrived, it was instantaneous and terrifying in its precision. Zaitsev's breath slowed, his finger relaxed on the trigger, and in a single, controlled squeeze, the rifle fired. The German sniper crumpled, and the street fell into a tense, frozen silence. Victory was confirmed, yet Zaitsev did not linger.
In this game, the successful sniper was always moving, always observing, always anticipating the next challenge. Days later, another sniper appeared, more cautious, more cunning. This time Zaitsev had to use deception, creating false positions by exposing rifle barrels briefly and then retreating. He understood that psychology was as lethal as a bullet. Fear and uncertainty could break even the strongest opponent. Over the following weeks, duels unfolded across rooftops, alleyways, and abandoned factories. Each encounter honed his instincts further, sharpened his patience, and built his legend among both allies and enemies. These duels were not without cost. The constant tension, the ever-present danger, and the mental strain weighed heavily. Every shadow could conceal a rival, every sound could signal death. Yet Zaitsev thrived in this environment, transforming stress into focus, fear into discipline, and observation into strategy. The duels became more than a battle of bullets. They were a battle of minds, each sniper attempting to outthink and outweight the other, turning the streets of Stalingrad into a silent, deadly battlefield where the unseen hand dictated the rhythm of life and death. By the end of this campaign, Zaitsev had not only eliminated dozens of enemy snipers, but had also instilled fear that spread like wildfire among German ranks. They whispered about the invisible ghost in the ruins, a man who moved silently, struck without warning, and vanished before retaliation. To the Red Army soldiers, Zaitsev became a symbol of hope, a single force capable of turning the tide of battle. The duels had forged him, tested his endurance, and cemented his reputation, and through it all he remained patient, silent, and lethal, the shadow that haunted Stalingrad's frozen streets.
After his first successful kill and the tense duels that followed, Vasily Zaitsev's reputation began to spread across the shattered streets of Stalingrad. But this was no mere legend. It was a campaign, a meticulous, deadly campaign that would eventually claim 200 enemy lives and alter the course of the battle. The city itself became his hunting ground, every building, every alley, every rooftop a potential vantage point. To Zaitsev, Stalingrad was a living puzzle, one that required patience, observation, and relentless focus. Each day he rose before dawn, navigating the ruins with precision, his movements calculated and deliberate. Snow crunched softly underfoot as he adjusted his scope, observing German patrol patterns with unerring attention. He noted the smallest details, a flicker of movement in a shattered window, the way sunlight glinted off a soldier's helmet, the subtle rhythm of footsteps across broken streets. Every observation informed his next move, every pattern memorized and used to anticipate the enemy's actions. Zaitsev's approach was not reckless, it was strategic, almost surgical. Each shot was planned, each engagement carefully timed. Over weeks, Zaitsev became a phantom. German soldiers whispered among themselves about the sniper who struck without warning, moving unseen through the ruins. Fear spread faster than bullets. Patrols slowed, officers hesitated, and even the most experienced soldiers began to question their every movement. Zaitsev understood that his influence was not only physical, but psychological. The uncertainty he sowed among enemy ranks was as lethal as his rifle. One engagement saw him perched on a rooftop, overlooking a frozen square. German soldiers were attempting to advance through the streets, using debris as cover. Zaitsev waited, watching their patterns, predicting their route. Hours passed. Snow fell silently, covering footprints and masking his presence. Then, one by one, he struck. A soldier here, an officer there. Each shot was deliberate, precise, leaving the enemy bewildered and demoralized. The silence that followed was not peace, but a tension, a palpable fear that someone unseen was watching, calculating, and waiting.
Another day, Zaitsev navigated the ruins of a factory, its walls pockmarked with bullets, smoke curling from distant fires. Inside, German troops moved cautiously, seeking to secure a strategic position. Zaitsev found a vantage point in the upper floor, concealed behind rubble. Through his scope, he observed their movements, noted their formations, and waited for the perfect shot. Hours turned into a full day of stalking, crawling, adjusting, and recalibration. The rifle cracked intermittently, each shot exact, each soldier eliminated without hesitation. By nightfall, several had fallen, and the factory lay in silence except for the distant rumble of artillery and the soft whistle of the winter wind. Zaitsev's success was not only due to his skill, but also to his understanding of terrain and timing. He moved like a ghost, often spending entire days in a single position, waiting for the optimal moment to strike. He blended with shadows, melted into rubble, and became part of the city's destruction. His patience was a weapon as lethal as the rifle he wielded. With every kill, he learned, adapted, and refined his tactics, ensuring that each subsequent engagement increased his efficiency and effectiveness. The toll of this campaign was not only physical, but psychological. Zaitsev endured freezing temperatures, hunger, and the constant knowledge that a single misstep would mean death. Yet he pressed on, driven by duty, skill, and a quiet determination to protect his comrades. He understood that each enemy soldier he eliminated was a threat removed from the Soviet front lines, and each successful strike bolstered the morale of the defenders. By the end of the campaign, Zaitsev had achieved what few could imagine: 200 enemy soldiers killed, a staggering number that turned whispers into legend. German officers became obsessed with finding him, deploying counter-snipers and traps, but Zaitsev remained elusive, always one step ahead, always calculating, always patient. The city of Stalingrad, in all its ruined splendor, had become his battlefield, his ally, and his teacher. Each street, each building, each shadow offered lessons that shaped his tactics and honed his skill to near perfection. To the soldiers on both sides, Zaitsev became more than a man. He was a symbol. For the Soviets, he embodied hope and resilience. For the Germans, he represented fear and uncertainty. His campaign demonstrated the power of patience, strategy, and the human mind applied with deadly precision. The 200-kill campaign was not a series of random acts, but a meticulously executed operation, blending skill, courage, and the unforgiving winter of Stalingrad into a force that would be remembered for generations. And so, across the frozen, smoke-filled streets of Stalingrad, Vasily Zaitsev moved silently, unseen but omnipresent, shaping the battlefield with every shot, every decision, every calculated movement. His legend was not born from chance, but from mastery, of his rifle, of his environment, and of the most lethal element of all: patience.
Even the most skilled sniper cannot escape the human cost of war. For Vasily Zaitsev, each shot, each kill, each day in the ruins of Stalingrad came at a price. The cold was relentless, biting through layers of uniform and furs, leaving fingers stiff and faces red from frostbite. The city, already a battlefield, became a frozen prison, where hunger gnawed at the stomach and fatigue weighed down the body and mind alike. Every day required careful rationing, not just of food, but of energy and attention. Survival demanded constant vigilance, and the constant strain tested even the most determined spirit. Comrades fell beside him, their deaths a harsh reminder of the stakes. Zaitsev witnessed the toll that Stalingrad exacted on those around him: young soldiers broken by exhaustion, men whose eyes betrayed despair, and officers forced to make impossible decisions in the face of relentless enemy pressure. The city, with all its rubble and ruin, had become a place where life and death were measured not in hours, but in decisions made in split seconds.
Zaitsev's role, though solitary, did not make him immune to the suffering. Each life he took, while necessary in the context of survival, carried with it an invisible weight. Frost covered his equipment and clothing, forcing him to move slowly, deliberately, ensuring that each step did not betray his presence. He learned to endure hunger and thirst, often surviving for hours on cold, meager rations while remaining vigilant. Sleep was a luxury rarely afforded. The moment he closed his eyes, the enemy could advance, patrols could shift, and death could arrive unannounced. Despite this, Zaitsev pushed forward, driven by the knowledge that each successful strike protected his comrades and slowed the advance of a seemingly unstoppable enemy. The psychological burden was perhaps the heaviest of all. Seeing the enemy fall with every pull of the trigger forced a confrontation with his own morality. Each sniper duel, each calculated shot required not just skill, but the mental fortitude to act decisively in a city where hesitation could mean death. Fear, both his own and that of the enemy, was constant. The whispers of terror that spread among German troops reminded him that he was effective, yet every engagement required restraint, patience, and a steady hand. Letters from home, glimpses of a world untouched by war, sometimes arrived through brief breaks in communication. They were bittersweet, reminders of what had been lost, of lives left behind, of innocence that could never return. He carried these thoughts silently, allowing them to strengthen his resolve rather than weaken it. Each day, each sniper engagement, each strategic maneuver in the frozen ruins reinforced a singular focus: survival, precision, and contribution to the larger fight. And yet, amid the exhaustion, frostbite, and emotional strain, there were moments of clarity. Watching the city from his perch, observing the flow of battle, he realized that human endurance was extraordinary. Comrades continued to fight despite hunger, cold, and fear. Civilians, when they dared to emerge, demonstrated courage under unimaginable circumstances. And Zaitsev, as solitary as his work might appear, became part of this human tapestry, a thread of resilience, determination, and silent resistance. By acknowledging the toll, understanding it, and enduring it, Zaitsev's effectiveness as a sniper was amplified. His mind remained sharp, his body conditioned to survive the harshest conditions, and his patience unbroken. The human cost of Stalingrad was immense, but it also forged him into the symbol he would become, a man capable of extraordinary focus and precision amid the chaos and suffering of one of history's deadliest battles.
As the winter of 1942 pressed on, the battle for Stalingrad reached its climax. Months of relentless urban combat had transformed the city into a frozen graveyard. Streets that once bustled with life were now scarred by bomb craters, smoldering ruins, and the remnants of those who had fallen. Amid this devastation, Vasily Zaitsev continued his deadly vigil, moving like a shadow across rooftops and rubble, unseen yet omnipresent. The German Sixth Army, once confident in its superior numbers, was faltering. Supplies were dwindling, morale was shattered, and fear had taken hold. Zaitsev's presence had become a psychological weapon as potent as any artillery strike. Soldiers hesitated at corners, officers second-guessed their orders, and even elite units found themselves wary of the invisible sniper who could strike without warning. Each shot he took was precise, calculated, and aimed not only to eliminate a target, but to shape the battlefield in favor of the Soviet defenders. By now, Zaitsev had perfected the art of moving through the city without detection. He had learned to read the rubble like a map, to understand the angles of sightlines, and to anticipate enemy behavior with uncanny accuracy. The sniper duels continued, but Zaitsev's experience, patience, and understanding of Stalingrad gave him a decisive advantage. German counter-snipers, once a formidable threat, were neutralized with methodical precision. Each encounter reinforced his reputation and further demoralized the enemy. The final stages of the battle were a test of endurance as much as skill. Zaitsev endured freezing temperatures, hunger, exhaustion, and the constant tension of knowing that at any moment a single mistake could be fatal. Yet he remained focused, moving deliberately through the ruins, selecting targets with care, and conserving his energy for the critical moments that would decide the course of the fight. Every kill was part of a larger strategy, each action contributing to the eventual encirclement and defeat of the German forces. In the rubble-strewn streets, the human cost of the battle was apparent. Soldiers and civilians alike had endured unimaginable hardships. Zaitsev himself felt the weight of each life taken, the moral burden of killing, and the relentless pressure of responsibility. Yet he understood that in this crucible, precision and discipline were essential. His work was not about revenge or glory. It was about survival, protection, and the larger fight for Stalingrad. As the German army's retreat accelerated, Zaitsev's role became even more pivotal. He targeted officers and machine gun crews, disrupting enemy formations and preventing counterattacks. His knowledge of the city allowed him to anticipate German movements, striking where they least expected and creating chaos in their ranks. The psychological impact of his presence amplified the effectiveness of the Red Army, turning a single sniper into a force multiplier capable of shaping the outcome of the battle. Finally, as the Sixth Army crumbled and the Soviet forces gained the upper hand, the streets of Stalingrad grew eerily quiet. Zaitsev, perched on a rooftop, observed the remnants of the enemy retreating, his rifle at the ready, ever vigilant. The city, battered and bloodied, had survived. The sacrifices of countless soldiers, the endurance of civilians, and the relentless resolve of men like Zaitsev had changed the course of history. Stalingrad had become a symbol of resistance, resilience, and the profound impact a single individual could have amid the chaos of war. For Vasily Zaitsev, the final stages of the battle were not just about kills or tactical advantage. They were about survival, strategy, and leaving a mark on a conflict that had consumed millions of lives. From the frozen rooftops and ruined streets, he had not only shaped the battlefield, but had also forged a legend that would echo through history, reminding the world of the deadly precision, patience, and courage of a sniper who had become a symbol of hope for the defenders of Stalingrad. With the surrender of the German Sixth Army, the battle for Stalingrad came to an end. But the legacy of those who fought within its frozen, ruined streets endured far beyond the snow-covered rubble. Among the countless acts of bravery, one figure emerged from the chaos as a symbol of precision, courage, and the deadly effectiveness of a single determined individual: Vasily Zaitsev. His journey from a young soldier to the sniper who claimed 200 enemy lives was not only a tale of skill, but also of human resilience, patience, and the complex morality of warfare. Zaitsev's achievements became the subject of stories whispered among soldiers and civilians alike. Accounts of the invisible sniper who struck with deadly accuracy, moving unseen through the ruins, spread across the front lines. He was more than a soldier. He had become a ghost in the city, a psychological weapon whose very presence disrupted the enemy's plans and instilled fear in their hearts. German forces, once confident and formidable, were reduced to caution, hesitation, and constant dread of a rifle barrel that might appear without warning. Recognition came not immediately, but it arrived nonetheless. Zaitsev's actions were chronicled by Soviet military journalists, who highlighted his extraordinary patience, tactical brilliance, and ability to endure extreme conditions. He became a symbol of the Red Army's resilience, an embodiment of the idea that one determined individual, armed with skill and strategy, could alter the course of battle. His story inspired soldiers on both sides of the front, reminding them of the power of focus, courage, and perseverance in the midst of overwhelming odds. Yet the legend of Vasily Zaitsev was not built solely on his skill with a rifle. It was his understanding of the battlefield, his capacity to endure hunger, cold, and fatigue, and his ability to remain psychologically resilient amid constant danger that elevated him to mythic status. Each engagement in Stalingrad had tested not only his accuracy, but his mind, his patience, and his moral resolve. By surviving and excelling under such extreme conditions, he became a living testament to the human potential for focus, adaptation, and endurance. Beyond the battlefield,
Zaitsev's story resonated in broader cultural memory. Books, films, and documentaries would later recount his exploits, painting a portrait of a man who was ordinary in his beginnings, but extraordinary in action. The sniper who once moved silently across rooftops, blending with shadows, became immortalized as a symbol of Stalingrad itself, resilient, unyielding, and capable of enduring the unendurable. His 200-kill campaign was more than a military accomplishment. It was an enduring narrative of courage and ingenuity in the face of unimaginable adversity. Even decades later, historians study his tactics, military enthusiasts analyze his precision, and storytellers continue to draw inspiration from his remarkable patience and effectiveness. His life serves as a reminder that war is not just fought with numbers or machines, but with intellect, courage, and the ability to adapt to the harshest conditions. Zaitsev's name became synonymous with skill, strategy, and the silent, invisible force that could shape history. And while Stalingrad itself slowly healed, and the city's residents began to rebuild their lives amid the ruins, the legend of Vasily Zaitsev endured. He remained a symbol of hope to the defenders, a nightmare to the enemy, and a testament to the extraordinary impact one individual could have on the course of war. The sniper who mastered the ruins, who endured frostbite, hunger, fear, and the relentless pressure of battle, left behind more than statistics and stories. He left an example of human perseverance and the profound influence of courage applied with precision. In the annals of history, Vasily Zaitsev is remembered not just for the 200 lives he claimed or the enemies he outwitted, but for the spirit he embodied, that even amidst the most brutal and unforgiving conflict, skill, patience, and human determination can carve a legend that resonates far beyond the frozen streets of a single embattled city.